Good evening, Jeff. Oh, it's so good to be with you, darling.
You too. You too.
So good to see you. I mean, I know we're in touch all the time, but this is always special to me, always special.
Me too.
And
I agree. Highlight of my week.
it's been a week. It has. Wow. All right, so this is my jewelry for the night, my little amethyst pendant that came from Michigan. I think Rhonda sent it. I'm not sure. I'll have to check the card. But also, I made an unexpected visit to the hospital today. So I can't tell you how many of these things I have. There are no words to tell you how many of these things I have from just like the last 5 weeks. Oh my God. But anyway, yeah, so I just got home a little while ago and had to wolf down some dinner before it was time to do the show. And so there was no time for hair and makeup tonight. So you get me as I am. But you never wear makeup either. So, fair is fair.
Not that I'm gonna tell you anyway, so I don't know. Maybe I do.
Well, it was really important for me to do this tonight, not only to reconnect with you, but to reconnect with our viewers, with our people that, come to us and count on us for this discourse. And it seems to help a lot of folks and make real difference in their lives. And I know that it makes a difference in our lives. So that's why we're here tonight. Hello, Kendra, sweet, sweet girl, and Judy. And here's Jonathan. Oh, Heidi. See, we have our tribe. Oh, so sweet. We have our tribe, Jeff.
Yes. Hey,
And
everybody.
they're so wonderful.
Mhm.
And the outpouring, hi, sweetheart. Uh, the outpouring of affection um, has just been amazing to me. The outpouring of prayers, the prayer circles that I'm a part of. There's my Brady. Uh, you know, I'm so humbled and I'm so touched. Thank you, sweetheart. From Germany. See, now some people stay up till in the wee hours to watch this show. Love you, Casey. Uh, so I had oh, there's my Deb, my so sweet Deb and RJ. Oh my God, Deb ordered the singing bowls for me.
Oh
So
wow.
I can get get my vibration up. And hi Trish. And get and Shelly Cooper. Oh my God. Um isn't this wonderful? How many wonderful, and that's Julie. Jules. All right, so let me tell you the story.
Mm.
This is what happened. It's 6 a.m. in Pakistan, and I woke up just to watch your show.
Aw.
Oh my God. Thank you. We both thank you
Yes.
for that. We do. Sorry, I don't have my cheater glasses on. It's hard to read the bottom of the, oh God. Um, so Jeff, I sent you a message in the beginning of the week or in the middle of the week saying, can you do 2 hours with me tonight? Because this is going to take a couple of hours. I didn't expect what happened today. Wednesday, I went to the hospital because I've been on like the heavy duty chemo for 6 days,
Mm.
6 or 7 days. And so they do blood work and they check and make sure that you're, absorbing, assimilating the toxic chemicals that they're putting inside my body, or that I am because they said so. And I've been very encouraged because I had a big lump right here on the side of my neck, like right there.
Mm.
Um, and I thought there was like an ear infection setting up in my eustachian tube. And so I brought it to the attention of my oncologist, and she said, "No, that's a tumor. That's a tumor, and that's a lymph node there, and that's a tumor." I was like, "Oh, fuck.
Mm.
How many of these things do I have?" And I mean, it was a good, healthy pea size. It was like
Mm.
about that big around. And I could see it, like, when I'd pull my hair back, I could see it, in the mirror, up close in the mirror, and, so I thought it was an ear infection, and it was cancer,
Mm.
and it's gone.
Mm.
6 days, 7 tomorrow will be 7 no, tomorrow will be 8. I am 7 days into, the chemo, and it's gone.
Mm.
It's gone. It's like gone. It's just gone. So
Wow.
I'm thinking, okay, good. So, this is good. I'm not having any reactions at all to it, no side effects whatsoever, no nausea.
Hmm.
I have fatigue, but that's only because it was a day from hell.
Yeah.
But my appetite is good. Everything is good. And um, I'm, getting proper rest. I'm getting proper nutrition. I ate half a pound of broccoli a couple of days
Mm.
ago. I love broccoli.
Mm.
Um, I'm doing what I'm being told to do. I'm following my guides. Hi, sweetheart. There's my so sweet. And so I get this call this afternoon after Christine and I had to run around and go do banking. And we had to go to the post office, and we had to go to the Social Security Administration, which was closed inexplicably on a Friday. So that whole way for nothing.
Mm.
And so we were out running around doing our errands and taking care of everything that we have to take care of. And she keeps up with all of my files and all of my records and all of my everything medical, anything medical. She just takes care of all of it. She is my earth angel.
Mm.
She's just an amazing, amazing person. And after everything that we went through with mom, for her to even have the stamina to help me through this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get this phone call, and they're like, okay, your potassium levels are wicked high in the secondary blood work that we did, because when they did the blood work, they told me that the CBC panel was perfect. So that was Thursday. Today, I get the call, you have to go to the emergency room right away. Well, that was a little alarming. And, I was a little belligerent about it. Like, why? Why? I mean, you told me yesterday my blood was fine. So why? And then the nurse got on and said, you have elevated potassium levels, which can be indicative of renal failure. Not two words that you ever want to put together, renal and failure. You don't want to put those two words together. And could also result in me having like spontaneous heart failure or heart attack. Like, again, not something that you want to fold into the mix.
Right.
So I had about a 10-minute, not a meltdown. I just sat on the sofa, and Chris is like, let's go, let's go, let's go. We got to go to the hospital right now. We got to go. And I just couldn't move. I was just overwhelmed, overcome, and overwhelmed. And she forced me to put my sneakers on and grab my handbag and get my phone and walk out the door with her. And I spent about 3.5 hours at the hospital, from about 4 this afternoon till about 7:30, quarter of 8, we got home.
Mm.
And They ran all the tests all over again. They hooked me up to every kind of monitor. I had round sticky things all over me, uh and they monitored me for hours and ran a whole new series of blood tests in the lab at the local hospital. It's all part of the same system. So, I was concerned. I was concerned. I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm doing really well on this medication and I'm fighting really hard. And why is there suddenly a complication? And Christine put it best when she said, this is your new life. This is your new life. You're going to go through this, and there's going to be other incidents like this. And you have to be prepared, and you can't just shut down and sit and cry on the sofa because you don't want to go to the hospital because all you really want to do is take a nap. Put your sneakers on. Let's go. So I did. And so I'm here to tell you that, at least for now, all is well. Uh, but the reason that I really wanted to do this show, Jeff, and then I will give you plenty of time
Take your time. Yeah.
comment
Mm.
on this. Something happened to me about 3 weeks ago. About 3 weeks ago. And actually, I can tell you the day. It was August 19th. And there's a woman in my life. Her name is Susie Fiore. Anybody that's read my books has read about Susie Fiore and how something that short could terrorize an entire college campus. And she did for years. But she didn't scare me. I loved her and she loved me right away. I met her when I was 17. And I just thought, that is the ballsiest broad I have ever met in my life. I want to be just like her when I grow up. Oh, God. And in some ways, it kind of turned out that way. She's a incorrigible influence on me. But I mean, we've been thick as thieves for all these decades. And about 25 years ago, probably maybe longer than that, maybe mid 90s, Susie called me one day, and I was living in a lovely cottage on Waterman Lake in Harmony, Rhode Island at the time. And she was in Pittsburgh, where she lives. And that's where I went to college. That's how I met her. And she called me, and I could hear in her voice something terrible had happened. And I asked her what, and she told me that her mother had been hospitalized. She was in one of the best hospitals in this country, in Shadyside in Pittsburgh, and that she'd had a rupture inside of her, and all poison had spilled out, and she was not long for the world. I mean, she was just, they were doing everything that they could, but Mrs. Fiore was slipping away very quickly. And Susie basically said something akin to, I'm not putting up with this bullshit. And she walked out of the hospital and went down to the nearest Catholic church, which was probably in Pittsburgh, I'd say 10 to 15 feet away. And there's one on pretty much every corner. Beautiful, beautiful Catholic churches all over Pittsburgh. But she walked into one, and I guess they had like a little gift shop or something. And she walked over to a figurine, small statue of the Virgin Mary, the Blessed Mother. And she picked it up, and on the bottom it said Italy, 1963. It was handmade. Absolutely the most beautiful, you can't even imagine. You'll see it shortly. And she put it next to her mother's bed, And the next morning, her mother had made an absolutely remarkable recovery, like that the doctors could not reconcile, could not wrap their own minds around. Within a few days, she was home, and she passed away not long ago from old age in her 90s.
Mm.
Um, and never had any more problems like that again. Uh, it was truly, dare I say, a miraculous healing that
Mhm.
took place. So before I knew Susie was going to come down to see me, and I asked her, and I knew when I asked the question, do you have a spare statue of the Blessed Mother that you could spare me? I would like to have her present in the house. And and she said, "Oh God, I know exactly what one to bring." And she drove all the way from Pittsburgh to Villarica, Georgia, to present me with this most magnificent figurine, this porcelain gilded statue of the Mother Mary. Well, Peanut was extremely excited that Auntie Susie had come to visit, and her little tail was going 100 miles an hour. And I had, I'm getting a download. And I put it over on the coffee table, but Peanut was jumping, 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 and the tail and the tail. And I thought, oh my God, I got to move this thing or she's going to knock it over. And I didn't want to take any chance of it being chipped or broken. So I got up off the sofa here and I walked behind that chair right there, that chair. And I walked over to the mantle board and I reached up to put her up on the mantle board after I had held her close to my heart and transported her carefully. And I put her up on the mantle board. And all of a sudden, a jolt of some force came through my hand. And it was so shocking that I let go of her because I was afraid I might drop her or, it was like a jolt of and traveled up my arm, all the way up my arm, over my shoulders, up my neck, across my bodice, down the other arm, and all the way to my lower belly. Was like Vesuvius was erupting inside of me. Fire. It was fire. It was a heat I can't describe. And I stopped moving. And then the pressure was like something was trying to make diamonds out of me. It was that kind of intense pressure that it's very difficult to express and explain, but it was real. And I stopped moving and I stopped breathing and just felt what was happening to my torso and in my shoulders and my arms and in the back of my neck, where there's cancer in my spine.
Hmm.
And I honestly, Jeff, I told you several times I wanted to tell you this story, and now I'm just realizing that this is where I needed to tell you this story,
Mhm.
not over the phone,
Yeah.
face to face.
Yeah.
Jeff, I thought to myself, Chris and Susie were both watching TV. Neither one of them saw what was happening to me. And I thought I was having a massive heart attack, but it didn't hurt at
Mm.
all. There was no pain associated with this. This lasted for about 30 seconds to a minute
Mm.
at most, before it just dissipated
Mm.
into thin air. It was just gone. It was over. But I thought, I'm going to fall. I'm going to face plant on this floor.
Mm.
And my last conscious thought before the sensation dispersed was, so this is how it feels to die.
Hmm.
I was sure that something was very serious and could conceivably just take me on out. And when it stopped, I had to process it for a moment because I was breathless from the intensity of it.
Hmm.
And I slowly walked around the chair and then back over, and I sat down on the side of the sofa. And I said, girls, something phenomenal just happened to me. I'm going to say that something divine, a divine spark, something divine just happened to me.
Hmm.
And I told them what it was. I told them that I was holding the statue, and then I put it down quickly so I wouldn't break it on the stove when I fell to my death.
Hmm.
And Christine, my smart ass sister, looked at me and she said, well, you know you're lactose intolerant, and we did have pizza for dinner, so it was probably indigestion. Okay, I've had heartburn like 500,000 times in my life. Okay.
Mhm.
It was not that.
Yeah.
It was something, but it was not that. It was not that. So, anyway, I looked at Chris and I said, honey, you're wrong.
Hmm.
And then Susie turned and looked at Chris and
Hmm.
said, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. It's not that. And I don't know what it was, but I feel that I must attribute it to the healing power of faith
Mhm.
and something
Mm.
absolutely magical about that statue.
Yeah.
Absolutely magical.
Yeah.
I don't know if Bill is back with us or not because he's got a boo boo finger.
Hmm.
He did it to himself, being careless, no doubt. And I don't know if he's back with us. Bill, are you back with us? Are you in the private chat? He's not.
Mm.
He's bandaging his finger.
Hmm.
It's awful what he did. Looks like he put it in like a Foley food mill, ground the end. Oh, it's gross.
Hmm.
All right. So I'm going to go get her. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'll take my slippers off. Watch where she is. Okay. Where I go, watch where she is. You know, over the years, I've said 1,000 times, oh, I'm a recovering Catholic. You know, I just couldn't really absorb all the doctrine and the dogma and, you know, the things. But I have always, my whole life, believed in the Blessed Mother that brought Jesus into the world. Now, I don't care how that happened or who was involved.
Mhm.
But I do believe that there is a prime creator and a divine and benevolent loving energy in this universe. And she is a very important part of it.
Yes.
Um, and, you know, when I think of the sacrifices, what she had to witness, what she went through in her life, I've always had a very special affinity. And from the day that I got my diagnosis, I had a song stuck in my head perpetually, and it's Let It Be
Hmm.
by Beatles. And I hear it in my head all the time. Just let it be, and let it be, let it be. Okay, this is the statue.
Hmm.
She's so, so beautiful. I want to get her close enough to the camera that you can really see her. And she's so beautiful. And and this, I mean, this was Mama Fiore's saving grace. Susie absolutely believes it. Her mother, Helen, absolutely believed it. And I don't tell anybody, I don't make any suggestions about what any single individual should adopt or espouse as a belief system. That is not my business. I wanted to share this story tonight because, and I titled the show tonight, Dare to Believe,
Hmm.
because I've lived long enough that I believe in divine manifestation. I believe in epiphany. I believe in miracles. I've seen things. I should have been dead 3 times over, and
Hmm.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not even counting what's going on with me now.
Yeah.
3 other times in my life, I should have died, and I did not, because something divine intervened on my behalf. You know, my affection and my closeness with our galactic family, but she's family too.
Hmm.
And this representation of her, this cast of her, is magnificent. So, interestingly, when I put her up on the mantle board before I got the zoom through the body, I put her right in front of, there's a frame up there that's got a little card in it. And it showed up several years ago out of nowhere. I don't even know where we found it. But we found it, and it was in Mom's room as we were reorganizing or cleaning out drawers or whatever. And it was her membership card to the Bronson Museum in Attleboro, Mass. And my mother practiced archaeology for years, and she was one of the curators of the museum. And that was her card with her signature on it back from like 40 plus years ago.
Hmm.
And so I thought it was a wonderful treasure or such a keepsake. And so I ran right out and got a really groovy frame for it and framed it. And until the day she died, it was right next to her on her dresser
Hmm.
where she could see it every day.
Hmm.
Well, I put Mother, the Blessed Virgin, Mother Mary, right in front of it and blocked the view of it
Hmm.
because it was the deepest part of the mantle board, and I knew she would be safest there.
Hmm.
And there she stayed until the next day. And in the afternoon, at some point, I looked up and she had been moved down about 4 inches to the right so that she was closer to being in the front of the corner of the clock.
Hmm.
And I sat, and I knew it wasn't Susie that moved her because she's just too damn short to even get up that tall. So I knew it wasn't her. So I asked Christine if she moved her. And she said, no, it's exactly where it was. It's exactly where it was. And I was like, no, it's not. Because
Hmm.
after that incident, that episode, I went and I took a photograph of her straight on to send to Dad and Carlene and to send to, Linny and to send, for people to see that this thing had happened. And it seemed to emanate from this piece of porcelain.
Hmm.
And so I took a quick shot of her straight on. And then I sent it to everybody I wanted to see her. And so I pulled up the photograph and I showed Christine that she was indeed right in front of mom's card and had moved all the way down so that the whole card was exposed. And I said, if you didn't move her, I didn't move her, and God knows Susie couldn't move her, then who moved her?
Mm.
And Chris said, Mom did. She didn't want her blocking her.
Mm.
She didn't want her, she'll work side by side with her, but she's not going to stand behind her. And, and it occurred to me that something that my mother would do and that she would now have the strength to do would be to literally give her a little bit of a shove to the side.
Yeah.
Where she was still safely on the mantle board, but not blocking that precious family heirloom.
Hmm.
So that's why I wanted to share this story tonight, because it has great significance to me. It was a profound event. And as I spend each day of my life now fighting for my life, I'm grateful to know I have so much help. I'm grateful to know that there are so many, including this blessed Virgin, Mother Mary, that are willing to step in on my behalf.
Yeah.
And, we all struggle with our concepts of, what is as big as what we try to imagine being God or the prime creator, source energy, whatever we call it, or whoever. I believe that Jesus Christ walked this earth. I do, because I feel the presence of Christ consciousness in my life. Not because I was taught that in CCD, but because I accepted it as part of who I am. And my affinity for her is lifelong. And she is the one that I pray to. And she is the one that I reach out to. And of course, the galactic family, which is kind of my universal health care. God knows they've stepped in the past. I have been helped and I have been healed repeatedly in my life. And I might never know exactly the precise source of that benevolent energy and intention. But what I do know is that I'm not done here. I'm not. And I will take all the help that I can get from any source. Any source. And Christine came into the room the other day and she's like, what if there really is like a God, like a being, like a deity, like an entity, there's like really a God. And I started to giggle a little bit because I thought, everybody I know walks around all the time going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. OMG, OMG, OMG. And so for a split second, I had this vision of an entity sitting, being bombarded with prayers for this woman on earth. And instead of, just like, what is this? Where is this all coming from? And it's all for the same person. I mean, I had like a George Bailey moment, and I said, well, if there really is an entity God, that God is saying, oh my me, what is it that's going on down there that everyone's reaching out on behalf of this woman?
Yeah.
And, and I told Christine that, and we chuckled a little bit about it. Oh my me.
Hmm.
Like, the only way to get it to stop is to help her, you know? So I don't know why everything kind of blew up today, and blood tests were hinky and weird that were fine. And then they weren't. And then the hospital, and then the bracelet, and then the. And I come home and I know that she watches over me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a very superstitious person, Jeff. You know me
Mm-hmm.
very well. This isn't superstition.
Yeah.
This is faith.
Yeah.
And she is emblematic of it. She is an artistic manifestation of a beautiful energy that I am calling upon
Yeah.
at this time to spare me the ravages of this disease
Mm.
and let me live on and let me help others in whatever way I can,
Mm.
in whatever way I can, to
Mm.
lift them up out of the darkness and fear and gloom and desperation and solitude and self-imposed sentences that are life and death sentences. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
We are all in this together, and you and I reach out to as far and wide as we can to anyone who cares to join us. Classes perpetually in session.
Mm.
We start with classes in session, end with class dismissed. But
Yes.
that's just to bookend the show.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, class is always in session, and we're here to learn our lessons. And the experience that I had touching a porcelain statue that physically altered me in some way,
Yeah.
that I don't even know yet, is enough to reaffirm my faith.
Yeah.
And to lift me up. And I hope anyone within earshot will dare to have faith, dare to believe in a higher power, in cosmic forces that operate to our benefit when we engage, when we connect,
Mm-hmm.
when we love. It lifts us. It raises up into a higher consciousness. It puts us in a state of mind where we are literally making a quantum leap into Christ consciousness, to the purity of that kind of love.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my whole story.
Yeah.
And that everything I just said for like the last 39 minutes was why we needed to do this show tonight.
Yes.
And now, while I suck down my coffee,
Hmm.
and it is in my birthday suck it up buttercup mug. I was working outside. I wrecked my nails. I'm sorry. I'm not fit for human consumption tonight.
Yeah, I didn't do mine either, so I'm sorry.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? Because
Yeah.
I did send the 2 pictures to
Mhm.
Bill, and if he's able to save the finger and ever comes back in, I'll have him put them up, and you can literally, thank you, Bill. Okay, that was the original shot of her where I had let her go. You can see how far back she is on the mantle board, and there is the card behind her. And then to her right is a little picture of my mother's 8th grade school picture.
Mm.
And Mom didn't want her blocking it. She didn't. I'm telling you, I just know it. I know it like I know my own name.
Yeah.
So Bill, put the second picture up. Okay, see how much it moved?
Mm.
Do you
Wow.
see how many inches that is?
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah. And nobody here physically moved
Hmm.
this statue.
Hmm.
Nobody did. Certainly not Peanut. She's
Yeah.
really short, although her legs do go all the way to the ground,
Hmm.
to her advantage.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Bill. How's your finger, honey? How you doing? You all right? You gonna live? Did you bleed out?
He's not talking, so I don't know.
I'm not even getting anything in private chat, which
Yeah.
means it might have been the finger that he cut that he would normally,
Oh, yeah.
when he's
He's a one finger typer.
he's
Yeah.
a one finger typer. Yeah.
Well, I got to say, I feel like, oh no, he's good. He's good.
Okay. Oh, good. Bill, give me an OMG.
Well, I'm really impressed by the story on a lot of levels, and there's a couple things I want to say. One is, like, I don't even remember when it was, but I'm pretty sure I texted you about it. I always use mowing my lawn, because I still push mow my lawn, even though it's like an acre or so,
Yeah.
uh, because I like the exercise. I haven't quite retired the push mower for a whatever, rider yet, because I need that exercise. But I always use that as my quiet time to pray and just kind of meditate and whatever. And I was praying for you specifically, and I was listening earlier in the day to the book American Cosmic, if anyone's ever read or heard of that, by Diana, can't remember the last name, but she's a scholar of religion, and it's her digging into UFO phenomenon, essentially. But at the end of the book, they go to the Vatican, and one of the people who she's been traveling with, who's a non-religious individual who's in contact, telepathically with off-world intelligences and stuff, has this profound experience of Christ in the Vatican. And I just had this deep sense. I almost just texted you, and I was like, don't tell her, just write it down. And so I just wrote it down. It was one of those things, but I had this strong feeling that you were going to have an encounter of a very supernatural sort, but that was going to look religious in nature, which is,
And it does. And
yeah.
it did.
And it was that
Yes.
same day. It was that same. I went, and I was in my backyard, and I was still praying for you and everything. And I had the sense to tell you, and I did text you this part. I had the sense to tell you that, you're being born and you're being mothered, and that you have been a mother to so many, that you are in this season going to know what it is to be held and to be mothered. And then the manifestation through which that comes to you is through the Theotokos, or the Mother of God. I mean, it was just so I want to remind you of that. And even that manifestation where she moves or is moved so that your physical mother is visible alongside of her, that there's something real key about the mother imagery for you right now, to know that you're
There
being
is.
held. Yeah. That,
Yes.
because sometimes you need the father archetype, sometimes you need the protector archetype, sometimes you need the mother, and I feel there's something very obviously, for obvious reasons, but that's being re-emphasized to you in a lot of it right
It
now.
is.
And and also, I was thinking, there's a lot of different thoughts coming to me as you were describing this, but I'm thinking of, because you said you felt the heat and the
Oh,
fire go through you, like,
unbelievable.
I've had an experience with that heat, and that fire. And I remember, and it usually indicates healing of some sort, healing, or like a purging or a cleansing, whatever. But
What it felt like.
I experienced it when I was, what was I, 26 years old, and I had shingles. I know you're not supposed to get that until way
Way
later in life,
later. Yeah.
but I was a pastor at the time. I was very stressed out, and apparently that brought it out.
Yeah.
And I had shingles all like on my inner thigh and my right leg, and it hurt because you got to walk, and it's whatever. And it was summer, and had already had a Disney World trip planned, and so we were walking around all day in the heat. I've got, two kids, one on my shoulder, one in the stroller. And I mean, it was absolutely just killing me. It was just like a cluster of open sores on my leg. I mean, it was just next level nightmarish. It hurt.
Yeah.
And we went to, that was, I was still pastoring at the time, and was still more in that vein. And we went to a series of like healing meetings that someone in the area was doing, and since found out the minister who was running them was a crook. So it just goes to show it doesn't matter one bit or one iota
Mhm.
context or the atmosphere. It matters where your heart is.
Yeah.
It matters what your faith is connecting to. Like Ernest Holmes says that, imagination is not just a fanciful daydreaming, it's fire from heaven, right? And
Mhm.
that's faith. That's what imagination is faith when it's acting properly. And so we were in that service and my leg was just killing me. And I'm just kind of in a meditative state during the worship, and I feel this heat come all over my body and just burn all over my leg in that area. And as I feel it, I'm like, oh, as I feel it, a girl next to me who's in a wheelchair, I hear her neck crack and she sits up straight and screams and says like she's on fire. And she ended up like claiming, I don't know, I didn't hear any follow up, but claiming that her neck straightened up from whatever it was. I don't know. But when we got back to where we were staying that night, the shingles on my leg just flaked off like dead skin. It's completely gone. Completely gone. I didn't have any nerve damage or anything at all. So like that 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 heat, that sensation of heat is often associated with healing. Obviously that manifests in Reiki and other practices as well, but in this particular instance that's how I experienced it. The other thing that came to my mind was the it's an Orthodox icon called the Blessed Theotokos of the Unburnt Bush,
Mm.
which in Orthodoxy, Mary is off. It's called the Theotokos, which just means the Mother of God. So the Blessed Theotokos of the Unburnt Bush, and one of the images that Mary is associated with in Orthodoxy is that of the burning bush that Moses encounters in the wilderness. And the significance of the burning bush isn't that it's burning, because dried shrubbery catching fire in a desert climate wouldn't be the most uncommon thing. But it says he saw a bush that was burning but was not consumed. So it
Yes.
was on fire, but it remained
But not
intact.
consumed by the fire.
Exactly. And so Mary is associated with that imagery because though she bears the Christ, she's ever virgin, and that's kind of the archetypal imagery. So she remains, unburnt, I suppose, in that sense. But
Mhm.
I feel for you that what is burning right now, you will not be consumed by it. And I just want to like speak that into you and over you and through the airwaves. And I think that's something we can all latch onto and agree. We can attach our faith to that concept and say that, yeah, though there is, and obviously the fire you felt there, I'm believing is healing, but also there's something symbolic there you can take as well of like, though it burns, it won't consume you. And
Mhm.
I believe that 100%. And the other thing, the let it be imagery with what's the lyric? Mother Mary comes to me, right? And let it
Speaking
be, let it
words of
be.
wisdom, let it
Yeah.
be.
And those words of wisdom that Mary herself says when the angel comes and tells her, you're going to bear a son, she says, let it be unto me according to your word, and those are her words of wisdom, is that sometimes, though you're faced with the impossible, though you're faced with bearing something that it just doesn't seem you can bear, the
Yeah,
wisest thing to say is, let
let
it
it
be.
be.
Because there is a law. I don't know who said it, but it seems to be a law that nothing comes on us if we're not able to bear it.
Yes.
And I believe that. And I've had some burdens come on my shoulders that I didn't think I could bear,
I know, me
but
too.
somehow, some
Yeah.
way, I bore it. And it may have
And
transformed me into something else on the other side. I may not have even recognized myself on the other side of the burning,
yeah,
but I made it through. And so I just like in just my weird way that I do things, I just want to like speak that over you here for a moment, and
thank you.
whatever spiritual authority I can
Mm.
manifest just through speaking in this moment, I just speak into your physical body, health and healing. We declare that the fire that you felt when you made contact with that port key, so to speak, that connected you to the unseen, that place where heaven and earth meet in the Theotokos symbolically. We
Yes.
just we like connect our faith with you right now, and we declare, yeah, that flame continues to burn through you, and it will. And and we declare that the external flames, the internal flame of healing, the internal flame of the divine is stronger than the external flame that might try to consume you. And we come together around you and just say, so far as it depends on our faith, you won't be consumed by it. And so I wanted to say that to you and give that to you. But
Thank you.
yeah. And it's amazing, isn't it? Because is that the same icon or that your friend's mother had next to her, or is it a different one?
Yes, it's the
It is.
same one.
Okay. I thought that's what you meant. I thought that
Yep,
was what you meant.
yep,
So
it's the same one.
yeah,
See right on the bottom,
it's amazing.
Italy, 1963
Mm.
is when it was made.
And isn't it just
Where?
that these things come into our lives way back then, and then they find us later in life at a
Mhm.
time when we need them? Like, there is just a divine thread that runs through things, and I don't
Yes.
know, it's amazing. And you know, listening, for some who maybe struggle with that, because some people do struggle with the religious symbolism, because I
Yeah.
understand. I do. I don't so much anymore because I've kind of passed through a season. But
Mhm.
I was, most who listen to the show know a little bit about me at this point, but I was a pastor for 12 years in a very fundamentalist context. And I had a crisis of faith. I became an atheist for a season of my life. And then through some synchronicities and remembrances of the supernatural happenings of my childhood and some encounters with the unseen, I found my way back to something like faith. And at this point in my life, I'm more than comfortable calling myself a Christian. It doesn't bother me. At one point, the word would have triggered something in me because that word meant something else. At this point in
It
my
did.
life, it doesn't mean that anymore. At this point, it means a strong connection to the divine, and the
Mhm.
figure at the center of the logos that my life is formed around is that of other-centered, self-giving, sacrificial love, which to me is what Christ is. So that's
Yes.
what it looks like to me. So I don't have any issue saying that, but I know some might, because man, we've all had, well, I don't know if we've all had, but most of us have had hellish experiences in church, right? We have had Some of us have been devastated by religion. Some of us have
Some of
experienced.
us have been traumatized by indoctrination.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yes.
traumatized by indoctrination. I know. I mean, I grew up in the church my entire life. I was, metaphorically dangled over the fires of hell constantly through
Yeah.
sermons. I was terrified of demons. All this kind of stuff, all the supernatural happenings of my childhood. I'm actually writing about it right now for the first time ever, really inspired by you, because I felt like, it's a story I've held in my heart for 40 some odd years, and my whole
Yes.
family has as well. And it's like, we've never told anybody about this, like, except for, whispering about it here and there. But that's the thing that tethered me to the numinous and brought me back around when I became like a base materialist for a season, and, I felt very inspired by the fact that you did what you did and had the boldness to tell that story. But, all growing up, like, it was just, I had only the option of demons really to believe any of that was. And it's like, so I was terrified, just constantly traumatized, terrified. And it's not my parents' fault. It's not even the church itself's fault. It's more, oh, I don't know. It's something bigger than any one human that stands behind a pulpit. It's a structure, right? That most of these people are just themselves enslaved by, and don't realize it, because they're good, loving people who wouldn't act that way if there wasn't something they were being manipulated by themselves. And but I know that imagery can be difficult for people. But you know what? Sometimes you'll find yourself in a place where that is exactly where your healing is going to lie, is in the thing that maybe offends you a little bit, because sometimes you have to get over that, because sometimes that's a roadblock. You know what I mean? And I've seen it so many times, even in my own life, at a time when I was still very much struggling in very much struggling with faith. And I was just devastated, and my heart was really broken, and I just felt this darkness over me that I couldn't explain. And I was still, really pretty much a materialist. But I prayed the Jesus prayer, which is an ancient prayer in Eastern Orthodoxy, which is very simple. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And you just repeat it to yourself. And I didn't even necessarily agree with the theology, but it was just all I had in that moment, right? and I
Mhm.
connected with it somehow, some way, and I said it just repetitively to myself in a way that I could construe it in such a way that I could get down with. Right? It was like, Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm positing a higher ideal than just myself. Son of God. Okay, manifestation of the highest ideal. Okay, and I'm breaking it all down and making it make sense to my materialist mind in that point. Have
Mhm.
mercy on me. Okay, I require intervention from something larger than myself, a sinner. Okay, I've fallen short of that ideal that I've posited, whatever. And I found a way to say it to myself in such a way that I could, even as a non-theist. And I'm
Yeah.
just saying it and I'm saying it and I'm saying it. And it broke through. And I didn't even believe at the time, but it was like sometimes your healing is going to lie on the other side of something that might initially offend you. And the beautiful thing about the image of the Mother of God, or the Theotokos, is that she is representative, yes, of the divine feminine. That is certainly an aspect of it. The Christian Trinity. Well, the Holy Spirit in the Christian Trinity is feminine. The word for spirit
Yes.
is a feminine word.
Yeah.
And if anyone's ever read the book The Shack by William Paul Young, a friend of mine, he has both God the Father as an African American woman, and then he also has the Holy Spirit as portrayed by a female as well. And he's theologically correct in that the spirit is feminine, and so it's actually quite proper to refer to the spirit as her.
Mhm.
However, the image of Mary is also kind of the um, I think it's a way that the unconscious took the Trinity and made it a quaternity, and kind of squared that circle a little bit, to give more balance to it, because we did lack that feminine, sacred feminine aspect, the mothering aspect.
Mhm.
And so, um, but the image of the Blessed Virgin, of the Theotokos, is that of where heaven and earth meet, right? Because
Yes.
um,
Where heaven and earth meet.
exactly. Where and also in Orthodoxy, Mary is associated with the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is shittim wood overlaid with gold. So again, there the imagery is, maybe a base material like wood with something that maybe is more associated with divinity or kingship like gold. It's the two things coming together. And the Ark of the Covenant was also the like a mobile throne. That's kind of
Mhm.
what it was. It was a theological technology, basically, because gods weren't understood to be mobile. They stayed in the temple. They were localized. So this was a way you could kind of carry your God with you.
Yeah.
So Mary is that which carries the divine. She's associated with it, and the ark was the place where heaven and earth met. So it was a throne. It was an earthly thing where heaven and earth came together. So that's what the image of the Theotokos, or the Blessed Virgin, also is. It's the place where heaven and earth meet. And if you have faith, anything can be that. You know, if you really like have faith, any banal moment, a piece of porcelain, like you said, it's more than that when you have faith. And if you don't, it can be less than that. But when you believe, anything can be like a port key in Harry Potter, that takes you from here to there when you connect with it through faith. It can be. I've seen it hundreds of times over the years. Hundreds
My
and hundreds of times.
my reaction to this magnificent bust, this figurine, was, oh, how incredibly beautiful,
Mm,
how absolutely beautiful, that she would approve
mm,
of how she has been represented in this piece of art.
yeah.
You know, not in a million years would I have ever
Mm,
expected, anticipated,
mm,
or even thought it was possible
mm,
that the kind of energy that passed through and infused my body with what I can only describe as an intense, healing, cleansing energy
mm,
that should have had me screaming. I should have been screaming in pain
mm,
for the heat, for the pressure that was put on me in that probably no more than 90 seconds. Absolutely no longer than 90 seconds.
mm,
And yet, I do expect miracles. I see them all the time. I see miraculous things happen.
mm,
People that survive, something that was unsurvivable. When my doctor said, what you have is inoperable and incurable, I just wanted to say, well, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. I do not believe that what's going on with me is incurable. And not only am I determined to make sure that I survive this, but that I use this remarkable journey that I am on to lift up others, to
Mm-hmm.
reach out to others who are suffering and who are lonely and who are frightened, so that this healing that I am going through is can be spread, like the disease itself
Mm-hmm.
has spread through my body. How dare you? You know my mantra. I'm going to say it again, just for anybody that might have missed the show the first time around when I disclosed this. But my mantra, and I say it every single day: Mother Mary should not, the Blessed Virgin should not hear this. She knows these words. Get the fuck out of my big, fat, fluffy temple now. Now. Get out. Now, I had a presence come into this house when I was sitting right here about maybe 10 or 11 years ago, writing my books. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I shut down the computer and I went and just threw myself on the sofa just so I could get horizontal for a little while, get the pressure off my low back. And something in the corner, and there's nothing but a corner. It's the ceiling and the walls that create a corner. Nothing there. And I don't remember what I was writing about. I'm sure it stirred up something. And as I laid on the sofa, it was a different sofa, more comfortable one than that one too, I guarantee you. I heard this horrific, blood curdling growling coming from the upper corner of the ceiling and the walls. And it was ominous. It was threatening. I immediately started scrambling about, what have I conjured? What have I conjured up? What have I invited in by writing about it? What have I done here? And as soon as I heard it, I knew it didn't belong and I knew why it was here. And I knew that I had opened up a portal for it as I was telling the story of it, which it turned out was exactly what I'd been doing. It was very loud. It scared the dogs. They both scattered. Not these dogs, our other two dogs, Coco and Libby. And I sat up on the sofa and I said, get the fuck out. You don't belong here. Don't ever, ever come back to this house.
Yeah.
Never. You are not welcome here. Get gone. In the name of all that is holy, get out. And it stopped and it never came back.
Yep.
It never came back. And we have to, I think that I know I have a potty mouth, but everybody knows those words. I think that we have to plant our sword in the ground and declare what is ours, what is our space, what is welcome in it, what kind of cosmic forces we will allow in our space, and that we have to set those boundaries. But with me and the Blessed Virgin Mary, there are no boundaries, and there never have been.
Yeah.
My mother had a deep affinity for Mary Magdalene, a deep affinity for her. And when we were going through periods of drought here, my mother would pray to Mary Magdalene and ask her to bring us some rain, and inevitably it would pour. It would just pour. Even
Mhm.
if it only poured on like this part of town, it would pour. And I mean, it became certainly not a joke, but kind of a running, like, Mom, call Mary. We got to have some rain. The leaves are all falling out of the trees too early.
Yeah.
And so the other day, after we'd gone through like 2 weeks of no rain and incredibly hot temperatures, I said, where's Mom? When we need her. I mean, Mom, could you do your rain dance and ask Mary Magdalene if she would please intervene on our behalf? And I'm telling you, Christine says, "Oh, it's not going to work. Only Mom can make it work. It's not going to work. I'm going to go out and water the damn plants." As soon as she went around to the front of the house and turned the hose on, the sky opened up. She came in the house
Yeah.
drenched. Like, don't tell me it's not going to work.
You're so right about there are times we do just have to get there's times we have to get pissed off. There
Yeah.
really are. There
Yeah.
really are. And well, you told that story. I'll throw a couple scary stories out there that also illustrate the same point.
Okay.
You know, growing up in the house we grew up in, there was activity all the time. From the moment we moved in there, my dad would have nightly visitations from something that tried to suffocate him. My dad is clear and level-headed of an individual as you'll ever meet in your life.
You've always said that of him.
And
Yes.
he is, and but there was an experience my brother had where he was sleeping downstairs on the pull-out sofa bed because he was terrified of sleeping up in the room that we shared because it was terrifying. So he left me up there by myself and he was sleeping on
Oh,
the pull-out sofa bed. Yeah, but he was sitting upright on the back of the couch, laying on the sofa bed, looking out the front window, out into the front yard where the mercury light was always flickered. It was just creepy and ominous. And he heard this buildup of this sound that sounded like a train in the background, like a, and he just heard it coming and heard it coming and heard it coming. And it blew into the window and threw him up against the wall and just blew through him. And he was frozen. And my parents were out of town at the time, and my grandma and grandpa were staying at the house. My grandma and grandpa come out and they see three literal shadow figures standing in the room that must have come in, whatever that presence or force was, came in.
Mm.
And my grandpa, not being the polished preacher that my dad was, who probably would have, pulled out some, charismatic exorcist style prayer, he just simply said, "Get the hell out of this house, you goddamn devils," and they all watched them go and out the window, and it was like, my grandpa wasn't a deeply religious man. My grandpa was not a man of like great, spiritual acumen. And yet it was just this moment of, you don't belong here. And you
Yeah.
certainly aren't touching my family. And those words of authority
Mhm.
force those presences out. We don't realize how much authority I think we really are bequeathed with, that the divine really truly does flow through us, and we're asleep to it most of the time.
Yeah,
But it's
but
true.
it's our power to claim.
It is. And I was a young pastor. It's another story. I was a young pastor, and I had a dream about a young woman in the congregation, and I had this sense that this person is struggling with something very specific, and I told my wife about it, and I was like, I think there's going to be an opportunity to maybe help this person. And I really felt like, but it felt like there was actually something kind of dark messing with this person.
Mhm.
And I had gone to like some men's meeting or something that was going on at the church, and some people had come over from the church to hang out with my wife, and this young woman was one of them. And after they had left, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I think maybe that was actually when I told her. Now that I'm thinking about it, after that person had left, I was like, I had a dream about this person the other night, and I felt specifically this, and I said the name that appeared to me in the dream, and the second I said the name, my wife froze, like, and grabbed the like arms of the chair and froze, just completely stiff. And my car keys that were sitting on the microwave in the kitchen, I watched go and slam onto the counter and like I watched it happen as my wife was frozen. And I was like sitting in the chair and I was like, no, I don't think so. And all I did, I went like that and I stood up. And the moment I stood up, the atmosphere that was like completely just dark and evil. The second I just stood up so as to say, hell no, it just went, poof, and my wife, she came to, and she was like, the moment you said the name of the thing that you felt was harassing this woman, she was like, it was like, she was like, you know, the movie Predator where he goes invisible and
Yep.
like you see the blur. It was like that was in front of me, like something was sitting on me and holding me to the chair. And right when that happened, the keys flew across, and it was like, again, there didn't have to be some kind of crazy exorcistic prayer or rite done. It was just this
No.
moment of hell no, you know, and it was like boom. And I've over the years, people talk, you feel when presences like that come into a room, they bring an intense fear with them. And I've come to believe that the fear you feel in the presence of dark entities, it's not your own, it's theirs.
Yeah.
You're feeling the
I
fear
believe
they
that.
carry of you awakening to who you are.
Yeah.
Because the moment you realize who you are and you realize that such things really only have power over you if you give it to them.
If you relinquish it to them.
Exactly. So a spirit of fear, let's say, is just a fearful spirit.
Yeah.
And the moment you realize that, that thing cannot stand in your presence. And I've had numerous experiences like that over there. Oh, geez. Yeah. Another one when I was a young pastor, the church that we were in, there was all kinds of sexual abuse that had happened in that church in its history. And we
Oh
found
God.
and we found that out by people who came to us later on saying, this happened here and that happened here. And this pastor had this long term illicit relationship with an underage girl. They found letters buried in the walls from like a teenage girl to the pastor. Like it was a mess. And we fought with a lot of that lingering
That
darkness.
residual energy, that
Yes.
residual negative energy,
Yeah.
dark energy.
Whether it was just perceived or it was something real there, I don't know, but I think it was a very real presence. And when I would be there at nights, at the night in nighttime by myself, prepping or whatever, I wouldn't have all the lights on. I'd usually just have a light here on in the sanctuary or whatever. I mean, there was a back hallway that connected two offices, and we always, it was kind of like almost like a little tunnel that went under the baptism tank. And I just always had the worst feeling about that area. Yeah,
Mm.
it's dark and dank and cold and in the way back, but still, it just always just gave you this off feeling. And when I was there by myself, I would hear things being thrown around back there. Now, either we had dog-sized rats back there, or we had something else going on. You know what I mean? But seriously, to the point where I was like, sometimes I just grab my keys and go. And I was there one night by myself, and it was happening, and I just heard stuff flying everywhere. And I did have like every light in the church on that night because this had been happening a lot, and it was unsettling. And I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. I work here. This is a sacred place. This is not happening anymore. And so I went and I locked every door. I shut every single light off up until the very last, there was my office here. I shut that light off and I went into that back room where all the noise was coming from. And I shut the door on both sides and I just sat in the middle of the floor. And I was like, do you have anything to say to me? And it just was dead quiet. And I was like, never come back again. This is a sacred space and you're done. And it never happened again. And it was a moment. I mean, the moment I kind of like came to, I was like, well, okay, that was kind of, and I was like, I'm still going to go. You know what I mean? But it
Mm.
was just this moment of face that.
Epiphany.
Yeah. Stop being pushed around by this thing. And I don't know, when you told the story about the presence that came into your room and you were like, no, in the name of whatever, get out. Like I really believe we are so much more powerful than we realize we are. No matter
Yes.
what faith, no matter what tradition, no matter what background you come from,
No matter what.
there is a divine fire, not just a spark. There is a divine fire that burns in each and every one of us. I call it Christ. You might call it something else. You might call it something else, and you might call it something else. We're talking about one thing. We're talking about one light that is shining through multiple frames on a reel of film, and it looks different with every frame, but it's the same light that's penetrating through that film. And we all are carriers of that. And
Yeah.
darkness cannot exist in the presence of light.
It cannot permeate it. And
It
I tell people, so many people who, do paranormal investigation, and they're a lot of them are very fear based, and a lot of them want that interaction because they feel more alive when they're fearful.
sure, yeah.
The shot of adrenaline or whatever. And and my attitude about that is, you've got it all wrong.
Yeah.
you know uh, you are earthbound.
Mm.
You are more powerful than anything that you interact with out
Yep.
there.
Yep.
More powerful, but you must claim that power
Yep.
and manipulate that energy. Don't let it manipulate you.
Exactly.
And the only way that you can claim that power is to acknowledge that you have more power than it does.
Yep.
Carlene sends me prayers almost every day, and she talks about um, expelling, expelling the evil, expelling the
Mhm.
demon, expelling. I mean, it's her language from her church and
Sure.
all of that, and I still welcome it.
Yeah.
I embrace
Absolutely.
it because the whole uh, ideology is what I already believe, that we live in duality. We are in perpetual conflict between good and evil, darkness and light.
Hmm.
And every time I receive a prayer from her, I feel the light of it. I feel like the flush
Yeah.
of, this, how beautiful is this language? How beautiful
Mm.
is this whole notion of fight the good fight, fight for yourself,
Yeah.
fight for your planet, fight for your human race,
Yep.
fight
Yeah.
however you have to fight for what is right and what is good
Yeah.
and pure
Yeah.
and loving. And love is, I've said a million times, is the answer to every question.
Hmm.
And I feel so overwhelmed with love, with the good wishes and the prayers and the thoughts and the energy and the Reiki and the, oh my God, it's coming at me from everywhere.
Mm.
And it makes me feel invincible
Hmm.
because it reminds me of my power
Yeah.
and how I have exercised it in the world by reaching out and engaging with so many people, thousands and thousands of people over all these years that I have literally held
Yes.
in my arms, that I have literally whispered to them, give me your pain.
Mm.
Let it go. I won't keep it. It will be gone. Just give it to me like you're giving me a gift,
Hmm.
and relieve yourself of those burdens and the sobbing that happens on my shoulders, and the kissing of the foreheads, and the opening of third eyes, and the connective tissue as it grows the sinewy, beautiful strands, like the strands of the tapestry of life. And when we make ourselves that vulnerable to each other,
Mm.
when we dare to love each other that powerfully, it releases the most beautiful part of what makes us human. I had an interesting conversation with Susie the other day, and she said, we were talking about the shooting here in Georgia, which is like an hour away from here,
Mm.
where this most recent tragedy happened. And we started waxing philosophical, because I'm involved in a conversation. There's going to be some philosophy involved. Um, And I was talking about fear with her, and she said that she thinks that the root of depression, we're talking about isolated kids and kids that are depressed and angry and bullied, and you know how that often, way too often, turns into something very aggressive and violent and acting out in ways that are so harmful to society as a whole. And she said that she thought that empathy was the core of depression, because when we feel empathy, which I think is part of the natural human condition, it's as natural to us as love. And actually an offshoot of it. It's a verb. It's something we actively empathize for others, force ourselves to put ourselves in their shoes, which is why when we see, you know, the mayhem going on around the world, and we see little blown up babies in Gaza, and we see cruise missiles being lobbed into the cities of Ukraine, and we see what's happening all around the world, it's gut wrenching, because for even if it's just for a split second, we become the mother of that dead baby. We become the mother of that dead baby that she carried in her body and brought into the world, into the midst of a war zone. And now this baby is dead in her arms. And it's that empathy that is so incredibly powerful, that, and so painful, that we have a tendency to feel it and then shut it down. Feel it and then shut it down, because otherwise we get so sad, so bereft, so grief stricken by what we witness happening in our world, all of which is needless, that it's very easy to slip into depression. It's very easy to slip into a state of being so grief stricken that it never really subsides. And I really feel like this thing I'm dealing with here, you know, this, what I'm dealing with, in some ways I help precipitate, because of my anger, because of my contempt, because of my loathing, because of my fierce desire to make it better, for it to be different than it is. And I've lived in a state of anxiety and depression and anger and grief for a long time. And it was only exacerbated by COVID, the emergence of COVID. That's when I became 2020, was when I decided I have to take that leap of faith and become a minister. And I did everything that I had to do to become a bona fide minister. I don't do anything with it other than occasionally, you know, marry someone, or occasionally, you know, lead a prayer or a blessing at a family gathering or whatever. I don't use it in any official capacity, but I had to answer that calling that I felt when I was getting calls in the middle of the night from dear friends who had just lost a family member to COVID. And I was the first one they called from the hospital. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And all I did was everything in my power to comfort pain that is inconsolable grief, so that I could do something to help, just to do something to alleviate the outpouring of grief. And the more I thought about what Susie said, in a lot of ways it made sense to me, because we're incredibly social creatures, and what happened during the pandemic was that isolation, desolation, um, insulation, uh, people had to keep their distance
Hmm.
in order to at least give themselves a chance to survive a virus that none of us had any immunity to. It was a horrifying, scary time for everybody, because the playing field was completely level and we were all equally susceptible to it. And it reacted differently in every host. So it couldn't, there was nothing really predictable about it. It felt like a universe full of chaos.
Mhm.
And the kids that were screaming, "Oh God, I gotta go to school, I gotta go to school." The next day when school shut down, they're like, "I miss my friends.
Mhm.
I want to go play football. I
Right.
want, I miss study group. I miss theater class. I miss. And it was that isolation that we all went through that I think changed a lot of us, and changed our minds,
Mhm.
and we had to get much more self-aware, more in touch with our own feelings. And then gradually the relief came back. We could go back to school. We could go back to work and see our friends. We could. Um, and I think it gave people a different appreciation of life.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that the onset and the diagnosis that I have received has given me an entirely new appreciation of life. I've always been kind of a live in the moment kind of girl, like pay attention to what's going on around me now. Don't perseverate on the past or project into the future too much. Enjoy, especially close to the end of my mother's life, when I cherished every moment with her,
Mhm.
when we both made sure that there was nothing left unsaid between us.
Mhm.
And she was too weak and frail to help me with this problem.
Mhm.
This was not even a problem that could be addressed while she was still here.
Yeah.
The situation precluded a trip to the emergency room. Off the table. Not going to happen. And now, who's with me
Mm.
all the time?
Yeah.
All the time. Because
Mm.
she is strong now.
Yeah.
She is strong now.
Yeah.
But, let us never forget our own personal power.
Yeah.
Our superpower is love.
Yeah.
And the only way for us to really, I think, come to terms with how incredibly powerful it is to use it,
Mhm.
and use it wisely.
Yeah.
To have it at our disposal all the time, and while at our disposal, put it into practice.
Yeah.
Practicing the presence,
Exactly.
some would say.
Yes.
Practicing the presence. Am I barking up the wrong tree here, or do you understand where I'm going with this, and
I,
all the interconnectivity, the
yeah.
interrelated
Yeah.
aspects of all we've
I,
discussed
I
tonight?
do think so. And there was something you said earlier that I wanted to hit on that connects in with what you were just saying, is that pardon me, when you were talking about that dark presence that you experienced,
Mhm,
that you drew a boundary between you and it,
mhm,
and you said nope, thus far and no more, out. However, you said when it comes to the sacred, there is no boundary, right?
yeah,
But there are certain things you have to draw a boundary between you and that thing, and then there's others you have to sink into. And
mhm,
you have to realize there are no boundaries. And I think that's where true spiritual authority comes from, is that because, there are people, and God bless them, everybody has their role, everybody has their function, right?
Hmm.
But I think a lot of people run after the darkness, even in the paranormal community, they run
Oh,
specifically after the
yeah.
darkness, and
Fear is a commodity
it
in the
is.
paranormal
Yep.
community.
And they want to.
Something that
Yep.
we as a community should rethink.
I agree. Like, and people go and they want to stir something up, and
Right.
then they want to stir it up, and then they want to bring someone in to kind of like put it back in its place. It's like, well, man, you just asked it to do this.
Yeah.
And then you ran scared with your tail between your legs, and then you think you're going to come in with spiritual authority and put it in its place. It's like the spiritual world doesn't really work like that. It reads you like a book,
Yeah.
and it knows who you are, and it knows whether you know who
That's
you are or
right.
not. And so, like,
Yeah.
there is but a lot of people go running after it. And I think sometimes if you go running after the dark, there's a fascination with the dark that is kind of a fear being transmuted into fascination, but it is in a sense still a fear. Um, and fear isn't a boundary. Fear isn't a boundary. Fear is an opening, right?
It is.
Um, but love is when you. So, anyways, what I was meaning to say is the purest form, I think, of spiritual authority and spiritual warfare, if somebody wants to use those terms,
Hmm.
is love, and
Yeah.
sinking into the lovely things, sinking into the good things, realizing the there is no boundary between you and that which is holy, that which is good, that which is loving. And once you realize that, you actually can rest. And I guess even, the point of some of the stories that I was telling is that there were times I didn't have to do anything. I came up against darkness, but when it all came down to it, in one instance, I just had to stand up, and it was like, made sure, no, this doesn't happen here. But then, I went through a season of my life where that kind of stuff happened all the time, because I grew up in an atmosphere where it happened all the time. And then I interpreted all of it in terms of my Christianity, and so I was fascinated with it and fearful of it, and so it was always happening to me. Stuff like that just found me everywhere.
That's the immutable law of attraction.
Absolutely, yeah,
It had an open invitation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But then once I just realized, okay, really, I started doing a lot more meditative, contemplative prayer, and implementing, a lot of the prayer styles of the mystics, and just kind of realizing this divine oneness and this divine union. I remember I had one last experience with something like that came to me in the form of like a sleep paralysis experience. And normally I would have to sit there and pray in certain ways and say certain things until it would break. And I just sat there and kind of yawned. And I was like, "You finished?" Because I'm really actually kind of wanting to be in bed. I'm not really interested in moving. So the fact that, you're like trying to make me not move, it's not really hindering me at all, because I don't really want to move anyways. So, you done? I've got this. I just was kind of like snarky and sarcastic and rested, because I was like over that, and I didn't have to do anything. And it was like, and it never happened again. Almost like a decade. Never had an experience like that, because there was a moment where it was just like, no, we're not operating in that realm anymore. We're in a
Uh-huh.
different realm now. We're in the realm of union. We're in the realm of union with that which is holy and lovely and good. And
Yes.
yeah, every now and then you will come up against something where you have to be like, nope, there is a boundary
Well, yeah,
here.
because it
But
wants to test the boundary.
yes, it'll
It
come up and
wants to
test the fence.
test it.
Yep. Yeah, it'll put its hand on the electric fence and see if it's going to get zapped or not.
Go right
You know?
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you are carrying that vibration and that energy of love with you, and that knowledge of your union with Godhead, with everyone else, and that's kind of even, the let it be concept. It's like,
Mhm.
that's where real spiritual power comes from. Let it be. You're loved. You're being carried.
Yeah.
There's a community of people that are behind you, carrying you and lifting you up, and you can feel it. You don't have to do the resisting all on your own. You've already staked your claim. You know who you are, and you've got a company of people who are carrying you on a royal palanquin, just of prayer and good vibrations and love, and you know like that's both for you personally, but then you can also just enter into that in your own individual spiritual life, when you realize that, the old biblical maxim is true, is that those who are for you are far more than those who are against you.
Yeah.
And if you just sink into that realization, yeah, you'll come up against darkness from time to time, but it's kind of just like flipping on a light and there's a roach in the room and it runs away. It's like, I mean, you don't have to you don't have to, it's simple. If you turn on a light in a dark room, The dark doesn't like go into the corner and be like, no. It's like, no, at 186,000 miles per second, darkness is gone.
Gone.
That's it. And if you can live in that consciousness, or you can live in the battle mode consciousness. And I would rather live in not having to always draw boundaries, but living in the boundarylessness of love and union. And then some of that spiritual authority stuff just kind of takes care of itself, it seems, if
It
that makes sense.
does. It does. It takes care of itself.
And it looks like love. When you're just in love with the moment, it doesn't even have to always look like, you said, practicing the presence, right? So practicing the
Mhm.
presence of God, that's, Brother Lawrence said that he called the presence of God, he said, is the concentration of the soul's attention on God, remembering that he's always present. And you can get to a point even with that practice where you're not even necessarily consciously always being like, oh, God's present now, just remember that. You're just, you
It's a
push through
given.
that. Yeah, you push through the like effort, the boundary of effort, and then you just sink into it as this is reality now. And you
Mhm.
are always just in that reality, in that flow, and things just kind of move out of your way. Things just sort of happen. Doors just kind of open. And I much prefer that to the constant battle. But then there are certainly those times where you have to put your foot down. But I also think I just love the illustration you said of the point where you had to draw the line, but then when it comes to this, you realize there is no line.
There's
I
no
think the
lie.
more you realize there is no line, the less you end up having to draw lines, because that which you might need to say thus far and no more is running from the light that you're carrying, and then
Right.
eventually it itself might get absorbed by it and converted by it, because I think all things are redeemable.
Yes.
Mhm.
I do believe that that is true.
Mhm.
That the road to redemption is paved with golden stones of forgiveness.
Mhm.
And I have a friend who describes me as the most forgiving person he has ever known in his life.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, I am, because I am aware of human frailty. Um, I am aware that we're in soul school and the test always, always precedes the lesson.
Mhm.
And part of that lesson is to get through the test and then forgive
Mhm.
whoever has offended thee. And the lesson for the one being forgiven is that there's someone willing to forgive them.
Mhm.
And that is their lesson to learn,
Mhm.
because what does it teach them? Forgiveness.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
therein lies the road to redemption
Yeah.
and purifying of the soul and the spirit.
Mhm.
And we are here to learn to love each other powerfully, without condition,
Yes.
without condition. Now, I have some friends that can get on my last raw nerve.
Mhm.
Just, oh my God.
Mhm.
Oh, my last, and whatever it is, whether it's being opinionated, whether it's being a little louder than I might have been prepared for, whatever it is. Um, all is forgiven, all is well. All is forgiven, all is well. I love you.
Mhm.
I love you, even when you're on. How many times have you heard me say, "Ah, if I could have my sister April back
Mhm.
for just one day, for just 1 hour." And oh my,
Mhm.
we would butt heads. We would fight. It would just, I mean, it was always something with April. It was always, and I would give anything to have her back just long enough
Mhm.
to have one more argument
Yeah.
Just one more, rah, 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 rah,
Mm-hmm.
just one more,
Mm.
because it didn't matter what we were arguing about. It didn't matter how loud it got.
Mm.
It didn't matter if it was, it involved hurt feelings.
Mm.
It just didn't matter because it was always ultimately resolved
Mm.
with love, the power of love, the infinite power of love.
Yeah.
I do believe it is the glue that holds the universe together.
Mm.
I do believe that it is.
Yeah.
And it's that in me that left me open to what happened
Mm.
with a porcelain statue.
Mm.
What was that? It was real. It was intense. It was pure. It was perfect. And it inspired me. It was a revelation. It was an epiphany. It was all the words.
Yeah.
It was all the words that we ascribe to miraculous events.
Mm-hmm.
And I accept it. I absorb it. I in humble gratitude, I receive it. And I had to share it with you tonight.
Mm.
I had to share it with everyone, not because I want them to alter their frame of reference, their perspective, their religious beliefs, their spirituality, their belief in the galactic family. I don't want, I, I just wanted to, as an offering,
Yeah.
of this is what I experienced.
Yeah.
Is there anything about what I experienced or what Jeff experienced that sheds light for you?
Mm.
For you, the viewer, or you, the listener, you, the feeler, you, the empath, you, the lover of humanity, you, the lover of this planet and all creatures great and small that walk upon it. Like, what part of this experience that I had, that I went to great length to detail, to really get into the minutia of this experience that I had, hoping that that divine spark touches someone else, reaches them at a point when they need to hear it the most.
Yeah.
Not to convince, not to coerce, just to share.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's why I felt so compelled to do this show tonight
Mm.
and to tell you about what happened when we were literally face to face, even albeit through a computer.
Yeah.
It's the closest we're going to get right now
Mm-hmm.
to being together and in a pure physical embrace. I can still feel you around me. I can still feel the love between us.
Mm-hmm.
And this technology that allows all of us to interact together, that allows all of us to circle the wagons around the fire and come together in a group that is larger than people that we could count or name, but the energy and the purity of spirit is present, and I can feel that divine presence.
Mm-hmm.
And Lenny reached out to me just before we did the show, and she knew I'd had the day for Mel, and she's like, are you going to be able to get through it, Annie? Are you going to be, it's 2 hours, are you going to be okay? I know you're so tired. I said, yep, I am one cup of coffee and one spark of inspiration away from nailing 2 hours with
Mm,
Jeff Turner and
mm,
loving every moment of
mm,
it. It's a you go girl, you glow girl moment. It is. I can't tell you. I mean, I sit here when we do this show and I wonder what apparition is just going to walk through one of those two doors,
mm. Yeah,
that people will literally see it happen.
yeah.
Eventually it's going to happen. They're going to make their presence known, not just to me, not just to you, but to
Mhm.
everyone.
Yeah. Yep.
And I look forward. It's, my door is open.
Mhm.
Well, it's not technically open, but they can just walk right through it. So, I'm looking forward to that time when
Yeah.
the lights begin to dance on my shoulders and people
Mm.
see
Yeah.
that I am not alone, that you are not alone, that none of us is alone. None of us is alone. And I can't think of anything more inspirational than that, because it is that sense of loneliness and desperation that isolates people and brings us into a mindset that is not healthy, that
Mm,
is not purified, that is actually fear based.
mm.
So I'm arguing with myself a little bit about this, and I really want your perspective on this too, because, I'm really pissed at the cancer. I really am. I'm really pissed at the cancer. But part of me feels compelled to thank it
Mm,
for my really big wake up call of reflection and introspection and contemplation and affirmation of my faith, uh, giving me permission to dare to believe
mm.
that there's something so benevolent, so kind, so loving, so healing that would touch me the
Yeah.
way that I have been touched,
Mm,
that I had to tell people. I had to, because it absolutely changed my life. And, part of me wants to just thank it and
mm.
then tell it it's time for it to go.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. Get the hell out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thank you for the
Mm,
wake up call.
mm,
Thank you for, somebody's been healthy, virtually my whole life. And then boom,
mm.
you know, there's a reason for everything. Everything happens with purpose and reason in
Yeah.
its right and proper time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything does.
Yeah.
There is a rhythm and a flow to the river of life.
Yeah.
And I've just had to relearn what I basically, preach to the choir, which is when it gets too hard swimming against the current in the river of life, flip over and float, and it will carry you
Yeah.
because it knows the way.
Yeah.
And isn't that exactly the same thing?
Mm.
Isn't that exactly the same thing? Oh, Bill, you know what? Nobody believes 5 minutes. Oh, well, all right. I guess he's right. Oh,
Mm.
jeez Louise. Okay, sweetheart, we'll wrap it
Yeah.
up. But
No,
old school's never really over, Bill. You know that, right?
true. I think you're onto something with that concept though, Andrea, because you know things do have their place in our lives. Things have their place in reality, and I think I used the illustration a couple weeks ago. But if you look at the way that a cathedral is structured, a cathedral is meant to be a map of
Mhm.
reality. It's
Right,
meant to be a map of the cosmic structure as it was perceived.
mm,
And this is in a Christian context, of course, but still, according to that cosmology, this was how reality was perceived. And at the center you have the host, you
mm,
have the body of Christ, and you go out and it starts to get a little less, the host the further out you get, but it's all still the cathedral until you get to the very corners of the cathedral and you have these like gargoyle-ish looking figures. And
Yeah.
it's like, why are these on a cathedral? And it's because it's meant to say these things have their place in the cosmic structure.
Mhm.
It's just you keep them in their place. You don't take them and put them on the altar, because even a person who's not of faith would still be like, that's kind of strange,
Yeah.
but on the corner of the building, even though it might strike you as a little odd, it still makes sense because everything has its place. It just has to be ordered. And so even with what you're experiencing, to say to it, you have your place. And thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the wake up call, because that's how you release it. That's how you don't hold the anger and the bitterness in your heart towards it. I always say that, the wrath of God against sin is his forgiveness of it. That's
Mhm.
how sin is actually destroyed in Christian cosmologies.
It
It's
is.
forgiven. It's forgiven. I love you. Come here. You're not a sinner. You're my son. And what does that do? Well, sin is destroyed. The concept is destroyed if it's forgiven. So real wrath against something is forgiving it, and being like, thank you, I forgive you. And it's no longer an enemy at that point. But
Mhm.
then you can also be like, however, you have overstayed your welcome, and
Yeah.
it's time for you to go back where you came from now.
Get out.
But you don't keep any of that in your heart.
Right.
When you thank it for bringing the lesson to you, those have been the darkest times in my life.
Mhm.
I was only able to actually let go of them when I was able to thank them. And then once I thanked them, it was like they
Mm.
had no power over me anymore. And they
Mhm.
went back to their corner of the cathedral and they fit,
Yeah.
and things were back where they should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, let's talk sometime over the weekend. I
Yes.
want to process through this some more with you about, my journey, and talk about where we go next in
Mhm.
soul school with this. Uh, and I just wanted to thank everyone who joined us tonight, everyone who might have gotten just a spark from this conversation, a divine spark.
Mhm.
Um, all I know is that I feel so wonderful and I feel lighter and brighter than when we began this discussion. And isn't that really the point of this
Mhm.
kind of open, loving, intimate communication that we're having with countless others
Mhm.
simultaneously?
Yeah.
And for me, that makes what we do here in Soul School absolutely magical.
Yes.
And so, that said, I bid you good night. I bid you adieu.
Mm.
Um, give my love to the family and, those rotten kids. God Almighty, what are you going to do with them? I
Yeah,
mean,
I know,
they're
right?
the ages that good luck with that. Good luck with that. I'm so glad I only have a dog
I appreciate that.
to take care of. And I wanted to thank everyone, and especially Susie for my beautiful, beautiful Mary, and Carlene for my daily prayers, and everyone else that takes a moment and time out of their own lives to lift me up every day. I am eternally in your debt. And with that, for Soul School, I expel cancer out of our classroom
Mm.
after giving it an A plus for effort.
Hmm.
And class is dismissed. Good.